Now, I know today we've had a lot of Bible verses, and Father has forced some of us to try and fit in. And I'll try to say, John the Baptist was told to baptize Jesus, and he said, I'm not worth of doing what? Untie the belt out of the shoelaces. So, the same analogy, it's a bit humbling to be told to invite Dr. Muthomi Thiankolu. I know most of you just have heard the name Doctor in law. We call him the law. I happen to know him very closely as a lawyer, one of the top-notch lawyers we have. He's also a teacher. I know so many things about Dr. If we were to read his bio, we will have another book launch. So, Dr. Muthomi Thiankolu said in the introduction that he finds himself in poetry, though he has just done poetry in high school. But we've heard that was when he was defending, I think this was the case. That was, I think most of you had that case that he was defended using a lot of literature. I remember most of them were thinking that that's more of literature than law. So he has also had his poetry published by Mystery Publishers in one of the anthologies, and that was the first time Emmanuel Kimadi analyzed poetry. He analyzed his poem, and we were shocked to know that this guy is good with poetry. So Muthomi, in your own way, thinking you're not a poet, you've been inspired, a poet because it's your poem that maybe you were
Thank you very much, Jerusha, for that very kind introduction. Thank you, Father Atanasio, who is a very good friend of mine, for this beautiful piece of work and the art that we are launching today, titled Appreciation of Poetry. I also want to appreciate my opportunity the first time to set foot on Tangaza College. I used to go to a college nearby here called Kenya School of Law some 18 years ago. And I would usually see beautiful things entering and exiting Tangaza College. That time I was in the land market, only that I never figured how to go past the gate. But today, 18 years down the line, here I am. I'm very honored to be here. Now, when I was invited to deliver the keynote for this function, I was a bit intimidated because, when you're not initiated into a particular guild, in the old days, the professions were practiced through guilds. There would be a guild of ironsmiths, there would be a guild of hunters, there would be a guild of blacksmiths, medicine men, and whatnot. And for me, the challenge really has been, as a mere lawyer, what can I say about poetry? Because it is not, a career in which I've been inducted. So you pardon me if along the course of my remarks, I say things that embarrass real poets, that embarrass myself and the legal profession, of which I would want to believe I'm an honorable member. Now, Father Mwaniki, when I was thinking of this, what I would say, I thought the appropriate title for my speech and the appropriate reflection that came to my mind is how we are all poets, how every human being is a poet, and why we should all perhaps appreciate the poet in us. It may surprise you along my speech that everyone here has been a poet, but they didn't know it. I'm hoping, because this is a university, Madam Kananu, there is a way, thanks to the projects, historically slavery followed by colonialism, today neo-colonialism. We have a tendency to approach some discussions with the Eurocentric lens. We see things through blinkers. So that when we talk about poetry in an education institution like this, we're thinking that there is something Western-centric about poetry. And I'm here to tell you, perhaps the greatest poets I've met are the village women and men in the Nyambene Hills where I grew up. And I'm sure even for many of you, as you listen to my speech. Now, what distinguishes human beings from the other species in the planet is our ability to make sense of the natural world. Some astrophysics will tell you the natural world is cataclysmic and chaotic and whatnot. But what will amaze you is how poetic the natural world is. The planets go around the stars in a particular sequence, not random. They take a particular path, an orbit, which they take a given number of days, and they repeat it. And what a lot of us do not know is that if there was a moment of loss of rhythm, to use the language of poetry, if the earth suddenly lost momentum, if the moon that goes around the earth suddenly lost the speed and the velocity, it would fall on the earth, because you remember from your physics, the centripetal, the centrifugal forces, and gravity and whatnot, and now the natural world we live in has so much harmony. It has the appropriate tempo. Even things, Jerusha, we don't realize. When I was young in lower primary, we used to recite a poem. The wind howls, and the trees sway, and the open window shuts with the band, and helter-skelter around the parents, loaded with thousands of minor cares. And I recall still as a young man in Nyambene Hills, observing the treetops during the breeze, and observing the tempo, the rhythm, the pattern, the sequence. That was poetry. I recall growing up in a village called Amato in Nyambene Hills, near a swamp, in which there were all manner of animals. At night there would be all manner of sounds, and I recall myself listening, to the sound of the crickets. And if you took your time to concentrate, you would hear they weren't just making that sound randomly and haphazardly. There was a pattern. There was a tune. To use the language of the guitar man, there was a key. And if you were keen, you know which cricket is making the noise off key. I even listened to Muthomi because the place. The random, croaking of thousands of frogs at night. And if you are keen, you know that frog, there is one with a pitch above the others. There is one with a base, there is a bit heavier than the others. So I'm here to interest you in the idea that there is nothing mysterious. There is nothing complex. There is nothing esoteric about poetry, because poetry, if I may attempt a very Kenyaji definition, is just the arrangement of words in a particular sequence, perhaps employing devices of expression like similes, like metaphors, like alliteration, like consonants. I see Priest is talking about all these devices in the introductory part of this book. But I'm here to tell you, perhaps, and why I believe everyone is a poet, only that they don't know, why I believe every one of us, from the teachers, from the lawyers, from the doctors, to the engineers, I could go on and on, are actually natural poets. Some of the things we celebrate in our various genres of oral folklore. In Meru, for instance, where I come from, we had a project we were trying to get a sponsor with Jerusha here. there were songs, there were chants, there were hymns, there were dances for celebrating various aspects of life. And if you listen to all those things, most of them are referred by narratives. If you know the lyrics, you will note there is consonance, there is assonance, there is rhyme, there is alliteration, there is imagery, there is metaphor, there is simile. But more important, there is artistic and creative employment of language to pass a message that befits the concern of, shall we call them persona or whatever, the person speaking in that work of art. So basically for me, human civilization in all its forms and shades and shapes, its advancement and crudeness, is actually about literary, musical, and artistic works. And for me, poetry is the thread that links all these various experiences of life. And I will take you shortly to show you. For instance, when you engage an architect to put up this building, you are told by Pythagoras 3, 4, 5. When you check this building, the roof has a particular shape. It is a concept done by the engineer to ensure this shape as it meets it can hold the weight of the roof, that the floor, and that this building has sufficient walls and windows. It is in sync with the natural environment. There is a reason this building, as I tell my students at the University of Nairobi, assuming buildings were portable, you could move them the way I can carry this book. If you transplanted this building to the northern hemisphere, it would be such a terrible lecture hall to hold this session, because it will be out of character with the natural environment of that place. There is a reason you find those buildings, they build in those climates, they have those sharp roofs so that the snow can. So, poetry, in my view, is about making sense of the physical world we live in and making it a more habitable place. I want to suggest to you, when the engineers are trying, and architects are trying to give you a building with a particular shape, a particular design, they are actually employing harmony, they are employing sequencing, they are employing balance, peace, tranquility. That's why you can't just transplant this building and take it. Any architect will laugh you off if assuming for the there was a way of carrying this building to another place. When we get entertaining musicians, like me, I love slow music, country music, opera, rumba, those sort of genres, because when I listen to the lyrics, there is poetry in them. The whole of that industry is about poetry. We may never have realized the whole of engineering, building, and construction will not make sense in the absence of an artistic and poetic mind. I recall today when I was coming here, some of my detractors are asking me, why are you wearing a wrinkled dress? One of them was asking, why are you wearing a mother dress? One of them was saying other things, and one of them was asking, why are your shoes out clashing? When we say, huyu hiyo nyumba ilitoka alikuwa na bibi, because they are color clashed. The person making that observation is a poet, because they have seen some discord. Poetry is about harmony. It's not about discord. It's about things matching and syncing without conflict. When you walk to a medical center, a health facility, a psychiatric clinic, and you hear people saying, this nurse is very rude. This doctor, he may know how to cut people, it's coupled, but he's in the wrong career. This lawyer, this thing, most of us in the career, the reason you find people are not fitting in certain careers is because they lack the tempo, the sequencing. They are out of sync. Their personal traits. Just imagine going to a church in which the priest was shouting obscenities. The priest will be out of track with the expectation, with the mood. There is a tone with which you can't preach. This speech I'm delivering, there is a tone. You cannot deliver such a speech. You definitely can't deliver it. And I recall when I was in the lab market again, the guy would say, yeah, this guy is very boring. This guy doesn't have a good vibe. You know, one of my favorite poems, Jerusha, is the one called To His Coy Mistress by Andrew Marvel. And the reason I like it is that it is so poetic, yet the message and what he wants to do is so chaotic. It cannot have anything to do with poetry, because poetry is about rhyme and illustration and whatnot, you know. He says, if we had all the time in the world, this coin is living, we are not kind. How lovely, 10,000 years before the flood, and I will spend 100,000 years on thy forehead's gaze, 200 years adoring each breath, for lady, you deserve to be loved at no less rate. And there are times I play for my law students this poem and some songs, but my good friend, to ask them whether this guy stands a chance with a girl, given the literary devices. So even in our social spaces, your wife will leave you unless you know some poetry, or you will get no wife in the first place. Hello? Or shall I ask like the British, am I speaking to somebody? So what I'm trying to tell you is that although we are socialized and trained to occupy certain silos, you know, there is a silo called lawyers, there is a silo called musicians, there is a silo called engineers, there is a silo called teachers, there is a silo called architects. You know, we learn these spaces and we protect them. We cling to them like dearly. And I want to suggest to you, I swear by it all the time and all, I will demonstrate to you the thread that links all of them, from the noble ones to the not so noble ones, is poetry. Here are my personal experiences why I agreed to come to this function. And I think some of my political detractors and frenemies, like Jerusha here, are the ones who already give the leakage. When I was in law school, I used to be cheated many times by classmates and friends because of my obsession with literary and artistic works. And many times I'll be asked, what are you doing in the law school? Why don't you just seek an interfaculty transfer and go to the School of Literature, Performing Arts, and whatnot? Because again, thanks to the ignorance of youth, you know, St. Paul says, when I was a child, I thought like a child, and I spoke like a child. So they would ask me, what are you doing here? You're in the wrong school. And as I'll show you shortly, some of the most important cases I've handled in my career. You know, people would imagine, Mwaniki, that law is about rules and regulations. I am one of few lawyers who have argued a case as input as a presidential election petition, what we were listening to, without mentioning a single rule of law, without mentioning a single section of the law, and still won the case. After lawyers spent several hours quoting Article this of the Constitution, Section this of the Constitution, what this judge said, and what the other judge didn't say, and what not. And it is only then some of my detractors back in law school is, oh, wait a minute, we were chiding this guy for his obsession with poetry and novels and plays and whatnot. You mean he can win a presidential election petition, the most important case any lawyer anywhere in the world would wish to do in their career, and you can win such a case without mentioning a single law? I want to suggest to some of you, and I'm sure you know this better than you, in psychology and psychiatry, and even in global physiology, the actual diseases, sometimes out of the treatment is how you handle that patient. The tone, the facial expression, the empathy. And yet, somebody like, well, medicine is about knowing which poisons and which pharmaceutical and which bacteria causes what infection and which is the cure, whether this one requires radiotherapy or requires surgery. Can you imagine to be a good doctor? Poetry is a bigger portion than knowing the chemistry of medicines and the biology and the anatomy of human bodies. We have just been told Jesus Christ himself was poet numero uno. You know, the Sermon on the Mount. You find devices there, repetition, similes, blessed are the poor at heart, for they shall see the kingdom of God. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed or happy, depending on which version of the Bible you're reading, which translation. Repetition, rhyme, as soon as whatever those things, Mwaniki, you're talking about. When I read the Song of Solomon, the only book in the Bible I have read a few times. The others, my reading is quite sporadic. But that one I've read a number of times. Because it is so poetic. When Paul writes to the Corinthians to resolve complex problems of a church established in a multi-ethnic, multiracial, cosmopolitan city, with pagans, with Greeks, with Jews, with people from all over Europe, a hodgepodge of various civilizations giving us very many problems. And then he is trying to tell these people many things and they're not hearing it, and he says he will use love to tell them all these things I'm trying to help you resolve. Lawsuits in the church, a guy living with his stepmother, another guy, women talking, making too much noise and arguments and whatnot. And he tells them, if I have faith that can move mountains, but I have no love, the body can be saved. If I offer my body to be sacrificed, and I have no love, if I can speak the tongues of angels and men, and I have no love, look, can you hear poem in that Corinthians 13? Can you hear if in every line repeated? Right a little. Can you hear metaphor? I'm just like a clanging cymbal. So you cannot be a good priest unless you know poetry. And the guy that you are very fortunate that your priest here is a man who actually is also a poet. In the course of my career, I recall saying more lyrical things than the ones you were hearing here. I recall as hearing a case called BPI, a case that posed existential threats for this experiment we've been doing called democracy. And I recall I was representing the 76th complainant in that case. And one of the challenges we had with my team in terms of strategy, the judges have been hearing section this, section this, from 75 lawyers before I come to speak. Surely the easiest way for them to sleep and not know my client's passion and perspective about that is me coming to that audience to speak about section X and section Y of this statute called B. And if you watch them, because those videos are out on the World Wide Web, again, something that critical, which has significant implications of the very existential dimensions of Kenya as a republic, is argued by a lawyer at the risk of boasting one of the best, north of the Limpopo, down of the Sahara, without mentioning a single rule of law. I recall doing many cases on impeachment. I recall in the course of that career invoking Shakespeare, invoking Shaban Roberts, you heard about Kusadikika here. I've done many things invoking Chinua Achebe. Wonderful things you wouldn't believe they have anything to do with law at the very highest species of legal practice. And I'm here to tell you, there are very many things, if there are engineers in this room, you can do with poetry and give us a building that people speak about for generations to come. Because poetry was deployed in coming up with that building. That you can employ poetry in your medical career if they are medici. That you can employ poetry in your theological career. And you'll be one of the preachers even long after you're gone. I mean, the reason we are now reminiscing on that thing, which I don't know whether you ever knew it, was actually 1 Corinthians 1:13 or 1 Corinthians, whatever. It is amazing, ladies and gentlemen, my message to you, how we don't realize even the songs we dance to. Someone here was speaking about the interplay between poetry and music. If you listen to, I don't know, do you want to pick any random great song that is very popular anywhere in the world? And we can play the lyrics on this screen, and you'll see rhyme, you'll see alliteration, you'll see all those things, you'll see metaphor, you'll see. It is actually a poem by another name. We know it as a song, but it is actually a poem. We know that book, Proverbs. How many of us know it's actually a poem? Yes, it is formed with very many things. But have you seen the amount of imagery employed? The amount of simile deployed in writing that book? Have you actually noted the alliteration employed in writing for the Ecclesiastes? So those books are actually poems. Of course, the obvious one is Psalms. But I'm here to interest you because I want you to take you to a plane, a level beyond the obvious, beyond the appearances. Our God, the God we worship, because the Gaza is founded on Christian, is a poetic God. They have order. When I was doing my CRE, I was told God is orderly. He's not chaotic. He's not aphazite. You know, on first day, He created this. But then He saw something was amiss. The earth was void and empty. Even like we don't like voidness and emptiness. So He has to bring something to it. And we thought God created a paradise. In fact, I hope I'm not being too theological because some of our audience will be lost. I don't know if they know a paradise is a garden. That's the etymology of the word paradise. When we were told Adam and Eve were placed in the garden of Eden, they were actually in a paradise. Father here was asking, when we read our Bible, you know, Abraham has been promised land flowing with milk and honey. So how can the Arabian desert the land flowing with milk and honey unless you understand metaphor. Unless you understand stylistic devices. You know, the Sadducees asking Jesus, yeah, there was this woman and you say there will be resurrection, and she married the oldest brother, died, the next took over, the next took over, all 7 of them. I don't know whether they knew that thing they said before you take a week to know what killed the husband. So all 7 of them died, and they asked Jesus, now on the day of resurrection, whose wife will she? And I recall Jesus again answering them in a philosophical, metaphorical way, or shall I say, poetic way. That in heaven, we don't go in this physical whatever. That heaven is not a physical space. It's not a metaphysical. I could go on and on. What I'm here to tell you is that all human endeavors, be it religion, be it politics, be it entertainment, be it engineering, be it medicine, be it law, anything, name it. To me, none of those human occupations, careers, professions, engagements, even being a prostitute requires you know poetry, that when you stop a car, you talk nicely. Even being a thief requires some poetry. You have to step gently and in a particular sequence, lest the guy hears if you're just too random. So to me, and I hope I'm not using very extreme examples, my brother, I'm hoping to develop interest in all of us and to demystify poetry and say all these things we do. I don't know whether I can engage in some hate speech. You won't quote me on this, but there are many stereotypes Kenyans make, and they say there is a particular place where we throw everything in the pot, light the fire, and know the mix will turn out well. There is no poetry employed in that type of book. My brother, I'm very honored to have been called to speak to this. And for me, where I'm happy is that you're not just a priest preaching abstract things. You're actually helping us understand. And for me, why I love and why I bring to come is that if we understood poetry, we would actually be better Christians. Because we would read our Bible, understand it in context, understand it beyond the Pharisees' black letter scripture. You know, why are you lifting your donkey from the pit on Sabbath? The poor guy has been sick for that 8 years, and the obsession we have is why he has been healed on a Sabbath. We are not counting the number of Sabbaths he has suffered for the last 38 years. So I'm challenging all of us, we'll be better lecturers, we'll be better cooks, we'll be better wives, we'll be better husbands, we'll be better students of whatever discipline, if we start seeing all those things as actually building blocks of poetry or as expressions of poetry. Because once poetry gets out of the picture, we have randomness, we have chaos, we have discord, we have lack of rhythm, lack of sequence, lack of harmony. This device I'm using is poetry, waves, sound waves. It is sequenced in a particular way. You need to understand. Just like when you dance to that thing, then you just don't shake your body randomly. No. That car I drove here has a 4-stroke engine whose 4 strokes are sequenced Once this one is an upstroke, the next is downstroke, and they do that thing, and that is what gives the car the thrust to move forward. Newton's laws of motion. A body stays in the state. I could go on and bore you to death. But the point is, we are all poets. So turn to your neighbor and tell them, you are actually a poet. Thank you very much. So, by the power vested in me by the patron saint of artists, we declare this book by Father Atanasio Mwaniki, titled Traditional Poetry, officially launched at Tangaza College.